It's tough, for the average person who doesn't deal with law enforcement and overlapping jurisdictions and who regulates what, to know when you encounter a situation, who exactly your first call should be to. And we can always help guide people on that.
Yeah, and also to know what's considered illegal and what's not. Like, there's very little oversight into some of these things.
Yeah, and law enforcement, like in this Indiana case, sometimes it's just a lack of resources, it's a lack of knowledge, sometimes it's just a lack of motivation. And they don't want to be seen as the bad guys coming down on an elderly woman who just has too many cats. And but the reality is that if you don't intervene, you don't get those animals out, this behavior just continues, the animals propagate. And rather than saving 80 animals today, next month you're going to be dealing with 150 animals you need to find placement for. So it's better to just take action as soon as people know about it rather than sit on it, because it's just going to get worse and worse.
So if somebody is looking to surrender their animal or rescue an animal or support a rescue group, what are some steps that they can take to identify if this is a good rescue?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say first and foremost, I think people should support their open admission shelters. These are the government shelters, the so-called pounds that the city or county operates. These are your taxpayer dollars going to fund these things. These are regulated facilities. They do have some oversight. They're not great necessarily, but they're a good starting point. If you're looking at a private entity that's calling itself a rescue, first and foremost, you should ask to visit. A lot of these places will say, "Oh, sorry, can't visit." I mean, that's a huge red flag.
Right.
If they're not willing to show you, a member of the public, what they're doing and how their animals look like.
Red flag.
So can you tell us the story of a positive rescue or something where, I want to, maybe while people are like grabbing their tissues right now, let's give them a little break and give them something happy.
Yeah. I mean, so Caboodle Ranch is a great example. This was a facility in Florida that I mentioned earlier. This was operated by one man who was at the time in his late 60s or early 70s. He had 5 acres of land in rural Florida. He had 700 cats. And this is a facility that, that they by and large were not caged, which a lot of people would say, "Oh, okay, good." So the thing with that is that a lot of them had transmissible disease.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of them were not spayed or neutered. So his population was just kind of exploding.
No.
Why did he do that?
And, this started with a complaint that we got from someone who had been there and who was dismayed by what they saw.
Right.
And we had an investigator work there. We took our evidence to the local sheriff's department and prosecutor, and they got a search warrant. And they went in and they took every last animal he had. And, there were obviously a number who had to be euthanized for reasons of injury and illness. He clearly, one man was not vetting 700 animals responsibly. So there were a lot of
no one can.
diseases.
That's crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
But hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them were then adopted out. So these animals got the chance to find a home and a family that, frankly, they deserved from the start. And that this guy had denied them. And he was charged and he was taken through the criminal justice system, and he was barred from possessing animals, which is
that's good.
Wow.
The key to ending this behavior.
This goes back to, how do we fix this problem?
Right.
And what is the solution, Dan?
What is the freaking solution?
Tell us.
Well, like you said, it's to go upstream, right? And just cut it off the supply where it starts, and that's just spaying and neutering. We have 4 spay-neuter clinics in PETA that go around our part of Virginia and northeastern North Carolina and do free, low-cost sterilization surgeries. I think we've snipped about 160,000 animals now or so, which, obviously the math you referenced earlier, that means probably billions of lives, that are not coming into this world, that doesn't have room for the ones we already have.
Right.
So, it's just spay and neuter. That's all it is.
And breeders, right? Would you say, like, for people to stop breeding? I know cats, it's more of a specific breed that gets bred more by breeders, but dogs, right?
Yeah. People continue, because they're just, I think, vain themselves, to just want specific breeds, to want designer dogs. Obviously now it's the breathing impaired breeds, the bulldogs and so forth. But it's just, years ago it was pits. Obviously, before that it was, I think, Rotties, and Dobermans. So there's always some breed who happens to be the in thing at the time. And it's a shame because, obviously, these open admission shelters that are doing their best to help as many animals as they can, don't want to turn away people who are looking to surrender animals. And so they do have to euthanize, and then they get demonized in the press for having to do that, when the reality is, they're not the problem. The problem is the people who are intentionally or negligently bringing more animals into this world.